Hi, this is Siddharth Aluwalia. Welcome to the 100x podcast series. Today I have with me Anjalli Ravikumar, Social Mission Director at Unilever. Welcome Anjalli to the podcast.
Thanks, Siddharth. Thanks for having me.
Anjalli, why don't you tell us about your journey?
So, I think my journey really began as soon as I graduated from business school. I completely hated being in business school, but I only came to realize the value of it much later. I was placed in Whirlpool, where I was actually trying to sell washing machines in parts of Chennai that didn't have water. So that was the most sort of eye-opening as well as ironical experience that led me to the biggest decision I've taken to date, which is I want to be part of solving big problems for which there are no easy answers. And that's what led me to sort of quit the corporate sector very early and work in development. I joined an NGO called Naandi Foundation based out of Hyderabad, spent 2.5 years understanding issues surrounding education, healthcare, organic farming, and the on-ground challenges in trying to get people out of poverty. And then went on to Harvard to do another master's in development, one that I paid much more for but enjoyed much more. And then came back to India to work across consulting and now in Unilever to actually bring projects to life that are going to make a difference to people.
So Anjalli, tell us about your family background. Like, what does your father do and how were you brought up?
So I'm really lucky to have a set of parents who can be described as very, very liberal. My father is an architect, and he's also been one of my biggest supporters in terms of any of the big shifts I wanted to make. I shifted from Bangalore to Delhi to pursue an education at Lady Shri Ram College. A very unthinkable thing at the time because Delhi was considered very unsafe and it was very far. But one of the best decisions I've made really exposed me to parts of India that I was very unfamiliar with. Then my mom, while she's a homemaker, she's also the epitome of someone who's extremely chilled out. She had 3 children and she brought us all up with a very, in a way that I can only be envious of, and I'm a mother today. She really focused on being there for us as well as what matters in the home environment. I have 2 brothers who have been subject to a lot of fights and a lot of, like I like to say, beating, scratching from my side. But I thank them profusely because these are sort of skills that you need, especially when you're working on development issues, because you really do need to have the stomach and strength to fight for what you want or fight for what you believe in. So I'm grateful to my brothers for giving me early training in that regard.
Anjalli, what's your purpose in life?
My purpose is really to bring my education, exposure, to make a difference to issues that are really considered intractable. For instance, empowering women is seen as a 1,000-year journey in South Asia because that's how long it's projected to take to really close the gap between men and women. And IFC, no less, has made this projection. So this is a tough problem. And I like to think of myself as someone who is engaged with the really burning issues of today and bringing the full wealth of her the investments that have been made in my education, the time that I've spent working in various organizations and my own innate abilities. So I would articulate it as bringing my sort of my difference to make a difference, because I do bring a very diverse range of experiences and education. And I'd like to use all of that for a larger purpose.
How does building Fair and Lovely Career Foundation connect with you on a personal level? And what's the journey of the Fair and Lovely Career Foundation has been since you joined?
So Fair and Lovely Career Foundation was born as an idea in 2015. We had just released a TV advertisement talking about our scholarships program. And then we were inundated with calls, had to set up a 40-person call center, received 15,000 applications from every nook and cranny of India. And we realized what sort of the convening power of the brand was. And that's when we said we must think bigger. We must think of helping more women where they are. And that's how the idea of Fair and Lovely Career Foundation was born. It would be a mobile platform that introduced young women across the country to the power of online learning, online career guidance, and exposure to job opportunities. We were convinced that one of the biggest barriers that exists in countries like ours is the lack of awareness. Most young girls today don't know that they can use the internet to learn, to upgrade their skills, and to access opportunities that can really get them closer to their dreams. Most young women think the internet is for WhatsApp or Facebook. But we are using the power of the brand coupled with the explosive growth in edtech and I would say even the online job opportunity space to really give young women show young women that there are better ways to use the internet and more empowering ways to use the internet.
Who have your real life heroes or sheroes been, and how they have inspired you?
There are so many women to talk about, right? From my history teacher at school, who converted what is otherwise a very, very boring class into one that literally took us to various periods in history. She used to really fire up our imagination about what it would be like to go back in time. A math teacher who, God bless her, really ensured that I aced my math exams. But apart from, women who've been hugely impactful, the women I see today as my sheroes are frankly, firstly, some of Fair and Lovely Career Foundation's users. They're such strivers. They might be stuck in a small town and may not even have permission to leave home because it's so unsafe outside of their homes. But they are still signing up for multiple courses. There's a girl who's completed 190 hours of courses on our platform. And these courses take so much motivation to complete. I am in complete awe and admiration of such women who are really doing whatever it takes to get ahead, despite this very strict limitations that they have to work within.
What challenges or hardships have you faced in life which most of us don't know about?
Actually, I would describe my challenges and hardships as being, I'm ashamed sometimes to call them hardships because I have led a very privileged life. As Sari often says, actually, the fact that we wake up and we have running water in our taps is a miracle in itself, right? We are so privileged. I've grown up, I would say, in a complete bubble in that sense. I think the challenge, therefore, is to develop that empathy for those who are not as privileged, for which, and at the same time, not be able to plant yourself entirely in their environment. Like, it is really hard at this stage in life to consider living in a village for a year. Although, to really come up with relevant innovations, these are measures that one should take, right? So I think that I think that for me as a development professional, that is a big challenge. How do we overcome the increasing barriers between our experience and the experience of others? And I do think digital and efforts like Shiro's and Fair and Lovely Career Foundation offer us a way to communicate and overcome those barriers, right? Keep that channel open. Otherwise, we'd be totally cut off from the experiences of, like I said, women from small town India or women residing in villages. At least we have now a way to hear those stories and share those stories with others, which I think is so eye-opening and so required.
What is your daily routine like, Anjalli, and what habits would you attribute your success to?
My daily routine really comprises some exercise. Now I've committed to doing something sort of that's good for my health every day. There is time spent with my colleagues, which I find extremely energizing. I love working with young people. I do have some interns as well. And then I've also committed to outreach to all our partners of Fair and Lovely Career Foundation. At the end of the day, we would not be where we are today were it not for our brilliant partners. There's English Edge, NIIT, edX, Testbook.com, iDream Career, Shiro's. We've also partnered now with Intern Shala, and I spend part of my day speaking to them. I also am always on the lookout for new partners. And that's a very exciting part of my job, talking to edtech companies who are also in the space of empowering women. So a big shout out to anyone who's looking to empower women through education, career guidance, or job opportunities. I would love to hear from you.
What books have you read that have shaped your life?
I had a professor at Harvard Kennedy School who's written a book on authentic leadership. His name is Ronald Heifetz, and his class as well as his book really turned my ideas of leadership around. Most of us, especially women, won't be given the chance to lead from the front. For instance, we won't be appointed bosses or appointed as leaders of teams, right? There is a bias in the workplace. There are all kinds of barriers one has to overcome, unseen barriers. But that doesn't mean you can't be a leader just because you haven't been labeled one. You can lead from where you are perfectly well and very effectively if you understand what authentic leadership is about. If you can bring, and one of the most beautiful ways in which to achieve this is to keep everyone's focus on what the actual problem is and what we're trying to solve collectively as a group, as a community. And I think that's been a book that's really changed my life and really empowered me to think outside of my job description or my title and go for what I really believe in, work towards that.
So, what mindsets would you say you attribute your success to, which have led you so far in your career journey and in your personal life?
The key mindset, and I wouldn't say I always had this, it's one that I've cultivated recently, is don't allow your designation, your company, or your payslip to define who you are, or your educational qualifications for that matter. They are actually becoming significantly irrelevant to what you need, what you can bring to the world, or the difference that you can make to the world. It really doesn't matter. And I think the best, in startups, you see this all the time. You see interns coming up with these incredible ideas and product improvement ideas. And you remember the scene from Uri, right, where the intern comes up with that innovation that really helps the army. I think that's just true. and that's only going to be increasingly true. You shouldn't allow anything to hold you back.
At what point in your life you felt lost, and what helped you to come over it?
I felt lost at several points in my life. I think very typical for many women, but possibly for men as well. The first point was actually when I completed my MBA, when I was with Whirlpool, and I just didn't know what to do. I sort of left Whirlpool very blindly, without realizing, without thinking. I just knew I didn't want to be in the corporate sector, although I'm grateful to Whirlpool for that exposure. It's only after some time that I found an opportunity. I think what got me through then was an attitude of just keep looking. The second point in time when I was lost was actually when I was coming back from the Kennedy School. Again, I wasn't clear on what I would do in India, and I knew I had this huge student loan to pay. But I found myself in consulting, which was a balance of what I wanted to do and how much money I needed to earn. And I think, again, the mantra is keep having conversations. You never know what you will find. The third point was when I'd had my baby and I had to leave consulting because it couldn't work out. We just couldn't manage the travel. And at that point, I left without knowing what I was going to do. I clearly have a history of doing this. But I left without knowing, and I found that a beautiful opportunity to work with Fair and Lovely and Unilever cropped up. And again, it's the same thing. Keep looking, keep having conversations, and you never know what will come up. Just never sit back saying that nothing is going to work out. That attitude will definitely not get you anywhere. I think you have to trust the universe.
If you would describe what are the 3 strengths of Anjalli and what are the 3 weaknesses, what would you say?
I think one of my key strengths is actually empathy. I do, thanks to my exposure through Naandi Foundation and through other experiences, have developed a sense of empathy, which I think holds me in good stead, especially when I try to bring more partners on board with Fair and Lovely Career Foundation. The second is, I think, my general excitement for life. I've always been complimented on being a positive sort of presence on the team. And the third is definitely my passion for my subject. And with respect to weaknesses, well, my team, which doesn't hold back their feedback, they tell me that I'm impatient. I have 100 ideas at once, all of which I want to see executed within the next 1 week. And then I think I do suffer from some form of memory loss because I'm sort of changing plans very often. But I have a team that keeps me on track.
Share more about your family, your husband, your kids. What does your husband do, and how do you each complement you or each other in your careers?
My husband is in private equity, and he invests in mid-sized companies. But more importantly, he complements my career by being a fabulous husband and father, and a great sounding board as well. I think it's very rare to have an equation where your husband respects your need for professional growth. Many men understand that women need to work, but not necessarily that women need to grow as well. And that growth often comes with compromise on the home front, that your wife may not be around as often as you would have liked, or that she need to spend longer hours at office. there's not necessarily sensitivity towards that sacrifice that has to come, and I think he's been brilliant on that front. So that's how he complements my career. The other way in which he I have a 5-year-old daughter, and she's a great source of joy as well as inspiration. Kids, you learn something from a kid every single day. I learn something from my daughter every single day, and honestly, it's made me a much better person.
Would you like to describe your team at Fair and Lovely Career Foundation? How do you work with each other, your strengths as a team, and what moves you together forward?
I draw a lot of energy from my team at Unilever and Fair and Lovely Career Foundation. We are very close-knit and really fundamentally all committed to the same cause. And I think that can never be underrated. A team that dreams together stays together. We have equal passion for making a difference to young girls with dreams for a better future, and we bring that passion to our work. As we strive for excellence. And how do I work with them? Well, we do the regular stuff, brainstorming and planning and reviewing, but I think the whole process is so much more joyful because we are linked at this values level, and we have the same ultimate goal in mind. So I'm very lucky.
Who have been your mentors in life, Anjalli?
Multiple mentors and so many male mentors that I'm I really believe that there are more men out there who believe in gender equality and women's progress than there are men who don't. And I want to find my way for Shiros maybe or to give space to those men, because they're such a powerful force and we must unlock their potential to move this agenda ahead. And I've been a beneficiary of so much mentorship from my bosses who've been men, from teachers who've been men, family members who are men, my own husband. My biggest mentor, frankly, is my husband. And people like Paul Polman, with whom I've had limited interactions, but each interaction I've experienced professional growth and personal growth because it's been so powerful in such a limited time frame. So I would say I've had a range of mentors.
You have worked with startups, Anjalli, both with FAL Foundation as well, who are your partners, and you will also get constant feedback on startups from your husband, who is an investor. What's your take on working with startups? How they have helped you or helped you had a better worldview outside the corporate?
The amazing part about startups and working with startups is that they can do things that corporates can't. Corporates are weighed down by process and bureaucracy and, frankly, not having access to new age skills in the same way that startups do. So startups can actually be very complementary or play a very complementary role to helping big businesses like Unilever move faster on certain fronts, especially with respect to digital extensions of their existing products and services, solving problems that they don't have the skills to solve. That's a big area of contribution.
What 3 advices would you like to share to young people to deliver excellence in their job or business?
What I've learned actually from Unilever that startups must be exposed to is the relentless consumer focus. think that's one of the key things that's made Unilever so successful. We invest enormous amounts of time, energy, resources to understanding what our consumers' issues are and designing products that make sense to them from their mental model. Fair and Lovely is actually one great example. While it is a berated, but it's not everyone's favorite brand. It is the second most trusted brand among women in India. And that is not to be dismissed as a minor achievement. Today, there are thousands of brands competing for women's attention. But to retain that position says a lot, because it means that Fair & Lovely has created a package of the 4 Ps of price, promotion, place and packaging that it just continues to stand out and continues to achieve a kind of connect. So that's big piece of advice is consumer focus. The second piece of advice is build your teams, because I think the greatest weakness of startups is that if you're not talking to the main guy, then you're not getting the same level of service, you're not getting the same level of attention, or they won't necessarily understand your business challenge. And that's a problem, that you don't want to create that impression as a startup. So hire talented people who are either smarter than you or at least at your level. Your scope for growth is limited otherwise. And the third piece of advice is really spend time to understand your customer's problem, because consumer and customer are different. If you want to reach women through Fair & Lovely, for instance, you also need to understand Hindustan Unilever's problems, in addition to having a solution that's attractive for a Fair & Lovely user.
What processes would you give advice which you have learned at Unilever and your previous work experiences, which you can share with young entrepreneurs?
Well, the first, I think, is something that has been spoken about a lot recently. It's don't ignore the potential of B2B to change people's lives. I know a lot of startups are looking to do amazing things and, really give people access to products and services that have never existed before. It could be counseling, it could be, helping on the health front, wonderful products and services, but it is really hard to get out there on your own. And I think there's an opportunity there to go to do B2B first and then reach that way. It should not be ignored. I think the second thing, as I would, what I've learned from Unilever is that you have to stand for something. Even our brands have discovered that the brands that have purpose do better in the marketplace. And today's millennials and Gen Z, and they really do care. Like, think of the climate change protests that have happened. Young people are participating in these protests because they really do care about the earth and how it's being affected. And you need to stand for a cause that young people will resonate with, and you can't just stand for it superficially, like make a film about it or, have one dramatic event about it. You really need to think about, if you can, reorient your startup to solving it. So definitely go green, firstly, in every way that you can. And the second is, if you have a product that isn't directly solving social issues or environmental problems, think about how you can do something more with your product or service and introduce that consciousness into your own brand. It's going to become critically important And I think there's so many even startups in the social sector that should be able to help you.
Thank you so much, Anjalli, for sharing your journey, your wisdom with us.
Super. Thank you so much, Siddharth.